This is great. I think these times of just being church together and having a coffee and a chat, I think is every bit as important as the stuff we're learning and putting into practice. So I love watching the church be the church. It's really fun. Really good. Okay, we'll keep going. Just another 3 hours to go here, and then we'll be at 45 minutes, but we're doing great. And I hope it's really obvious, and we'll just keep saying it. This morning, we really are focused on this stage back here, aren't we? Stage 1 or even 0. It's what we probably need to add a 0. And I know just from hearing and talking with some of you, a lot of us do have people who know they're spiritual or are into spirituality, and maybe are even visiting mediums or crystals and that whole thing. So there is a slice of the population that is into spirituality, and you might be sitting there feeling like, oh man, this doesn't feel quite right. This feels a little dangerous talking about spirituality or being spiritual. And I would say yes, if your family or your friends or coworkers already have a sense that they're a spiritual being and they're searching, that's great. Start there. Start where they're starting and say, okay, well, I think you're looking for God. I think that thing you're into is actually really dangerous because you're opening up other bad spirits who have a dangerous effect. So you know there's a spiritual world, and so let's talk about there's good spirits and there's evil spirits. And I want to talk to you about God. And because I think that's who you're looking for is God. And if you want to know God, then this Jesus person is very important. And I want to start to help you meet Jesus. And the goal is for you to follow Jesus. So if that's where your friends, coworkers, family, that's where you need to be. I think you guys all understand. We keep harping on about most of the people in our culture, and especially because we're working with youth, and we come out of the youth sector. It's the indifference. It's not that they're looking for God already or looking for spirit. They're back here, can't be bothered. What difference does it make? And so how do we overcome that hurdle? You guys get it? That's what we're focused on. So there's a lot we're not saying. There's a lot we're not helping you with, because this is the big barrier we're trying to get people in motion. Cool. Do you want to introduce the exercise, Joy?
Yep, great. So if you turn to page 8 in your glossy manual here, we had these printed. We're moving in 2 days, moving house. So things are a little crazy at our house. And so Darren had these printed rather than printing them on our own printer. And they came back on this really thick paper. And we're like, oh, that's not great for the environment. So I apologize if it's bothering you. We will talk with our printer about the paper choice here. So page 8. This is just a little exercise to try to ground the things we said earlier. I see the print is quite small, but it says, back in school we used to draw a line between the two things that match up. That's what we're asking you to do. So draw a line between the longing and how it might sound on the right-hand side. See if you can match up the longing that someone is experiencing, the wonder or the longing that they might have, with how that might sound when it comes out of their mouth, and just to see if you can identify them, okay? Take some time for that. All right, now take a minute, and on the left-hand side, the longings that we've written out, just read through those again. And the people that you were praying for earlier, I just want you to think, do you see any of those longings demonstrated in their life? And maybe jot down their name, that maybe there's a future conversation you can have when you see that longing come out in their life.
And I know some of us are looking to know if you got the right answers on the lines. So if you want to know the answer key, it's this. You can compare answers later and see what you think. It's more just to get us understanding the longings and the statements. So, You all get full marks for trying. How's that for a... Yeah. Yeah. Let's, just in the last few minutes, we want to play some sample conversations. We could stand up here and do it, but we've noticed with our young people that if we say the same thing on a video, they'll watch the video rather than standing in front of them. What is it about us, our brains? We could do a whole psychological thing, but I don't know if we'll watch the whole thing, but just a few sample conversations. We'll see if we get it going here.
In these last couple of sessions, we focused on the stir and translate stages of stirring souls. In the next topic, we'll take a closer look at the introduce and respond stages. But we have one more session left in this topic. And usually at this point, people will say to us, okay, this is really good and it's really helpful, but I have no idea how to use it in my everyday conversations. So when I want to talk about it with someone at work who's interested in prayer, or my friend who is into a lot of justice issues, like, what do I say? And people just don't feel real confident that they can do it on their own yet. So we expect that might be how you're feeling as well.
Yeah, that's why in this session, we want to present a few real-life scenarios that we've encountered and try to almost replay them to show you how we've used them to identify a spiritual longing and point to the soul. And yeah, we just hope this will kind of coach you through your own conversations and answer those questions that we hear, like, what do I say next? Or, hey, did I say the right thing when I did that? Or maybe even just affirm, hey, that's what I would have said, or what I did say when I was in a conversation like that before.
So let's try this out. We don't have time to give an example for every stirring point, but let's just get started. So Darren, the first one is superstition. Talk to us about your friend who wouldn't take the mirror off the wall. I think we mentioned it in an earlier topic.
Yeah. So I was in the back of the car. A bunch of friends were going to a football match. And my one friend was lamenting about redecorating his bedroom. And he was trying to repaint his wall. But he didn't dare take the mirror off the wall because if he broke it, it would give him 7 years of bad luck.
Okay. And also on the topic of superstition, your friend with the magpie birds, what was that story?
Yeah, we were just going for a walk, and he saw 3 magpies, and he was all excited. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to score 3 goals in my football match today because I saw 3 magpies.
Okay, so how did you respond to these different situations?
Yeah, so my friend with the mirror, again, these guys I've been friends with them for a long time, and they know I talk about God quite a lot. So I just said to him, do you really believe that if you break your mirror, you'll have 7 years of bad luck? Do you really believe that?
Okay, and the guy with the magpies?
Yeah, again, just like, do you really believe that seeing magpies will lead you to scoring goals in the football match?
Okay, and so how did they respond?
Yeah, well, the guy with the mirror, I don't think he really said anything. I just think he kind of responded, well, I don't want to leave anything to chance. I want to cover my bases. And I just said, wow, that's really interesting. You say you don't believe in God, but yet it seems like you believe there's something more, like there's this force in the universe or something like that. And maybe it would just be easier to believe in God. I don't know. And then my friend with the magpies, I don't think I picked him up on that in the moment, but it would have been really easy to say kind of the same thing. You say you don't believe in God, but you believe in something more than just random chance.
So how is this stirring?
Yeah, I think it's just calling attention to those below the surface beliefs and kind of questioning. It seems like you believe there's something more than just the physical world. And I think it just gets something, do I believe that there's something more out there? And it just also gives me a chance to follow up and pick up on that conversation again. So that was superstition. We also said that we quite often talk about suffering and injustice. So do you have an example? I think what our friend at church was telling us, do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. We've got a friend at church who was having a conversation. She was learning to stir, and it was so exciting to see her put it into practice. She told us about a conversation she had with a colleague, and his daughter had had a bad weekend because she had fallen out with some friends. And so our friend Ruth said to him, I understand what you're going through. She empathized with him, and she said, isn't this interesting, this really keen sense of injustice that our teenagers have in regards to relationships? And I think it just uncovers that there's a spiritual thing going on there. It's a spiritual response to their situation.
Yeah, I think it's just really exciting to see her trying this and, pointing to that longing of the soul and seeing injustice in broken relationships.
Yeah, so she didn't really go on from there a whole lot, but she took the time to point out that there's more than just something physical going on here. So, that she told us it led to further conversation with her colleague where she got to tell him that she was a Christian and that she relied on God in her parenting, and she also was seeing how her kids knew who they were because God told them who they were. So when they faced these relationship challenges, they had a bit more peace because they knew who they were, because they knew who God told them they were.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's actually getting into some of the other ways of stirring and starting to introduce people to God and how he can practically help our lives. So, yeah, she was even getting ahead, wasn't she? Okay, great. I think we can keep moving forward and sharing a few more examples. So how about prayer? I know we talk about prayer quite a bit. Can we think of an example?
Well, I can think of one. You need to talk about your friend that you chat about prayer with on your dog walk.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, she was talking about prayer and about heaven, and if there's a heaven, what are we going to wear because we can't buy our clothes at M&S?
Okay, well, stick to the prayer part.
Okay, yeah. So again, wasn't our first conversation. We've been getting to know each other for several months on the dog walk. But one morning, I still remember, just as I walked up, she said, hey, you're religious, aren't you? And I was thinking of you this morning because I don't believe in God, but I still pray to him. But I'm not sure if that's just some kind of insurance or something. Like, this one time I couldn't find my keys and I asked God if I could find them, and I did. So I don't know, is that just coincidence or is that God? So I'm just thinking, our dogs are running around waiting for us to throw the ball again, and I'm trying to think of how to stir.
Okay, so how do you stir in that setting?
Yeah, well, I decided not to try to explain why prayer works sometimes and why it doesn't. Because even I don't always understand why God answers our prayers, and sometimes he doesn't. But I just try to say, it's really interesting. You say you don't believe in God, but yet you still pray to him. And I think that shows you're spiritual, that you do have a spirit or a soul that longs to connect with God. And I know you don't believe that yet, but I believe you do long to connect with God. And that's what you're doing when you pray. And so keep doing that. Keep trying.
Yeah, that's great. So have you had any other conversations with her?
Yeah, just the other day when we were talking, she's facing kind of a health scare that she's a bit worried about. And so she was telling me about it. And I said, well, you know me, I'll be praying for you. And she said, I know, that's why I told you. So yeah, she's growing more open. All right, can we think of another example? Maybe that one. We can stop it there. There's a few more, and we'll tell you about those videos in a minute. Let me get my clicker. But yeah, we just want to start bringing it into land here. Stirring is just the beginning. So all these looking for longings, pointing out longings, we know it's way back here on the scale. And if you're like most normal Christians, some of us are probably shifting in our pews thinking, we haven't even talked about Jesus yet. So when are we going to tell people about Jesus? Because we do want to tell people about Jesus, right? Let me see if I get that working. I might need to have you click through, Tim. Oh, there we go. Sweet. There we go. Oh, now I'm way past my mark. We'll get there. This is our first technical faux pas so far. Okay, stay there. So yeah, we kind of have a little acrostic, and it has to match up with stir, because this is how these things go, right? Everyone's got to have their gimmick. We've got a gimmick. But it does help us to think through this whole process of evangelism. So stir is just the start. How do we motivate a spiritual journey? By pointing out the longings of the soul. Translate is, just that learning, and it takes time. It's taken us time and practice to call attention to those longings. Did I put this in the notes? Is this in the notes? Yeah. Okay, good. Woo. And then, once that relevancy barrier is overcome, once the apathy and indifference is overcome, and people, I actually might be a spiritual person, and there might be a God, and I actually might be interested in knowing God. Well, then this whole sharing faith gets actually really easy, because we're just kind of jumping on board and going along for the ride. It's like, okay, that thing you're looking for, that person you're looking for, I believe that's God, and I would love to start to introduce you to God. And then as they want to know God, say, okay, if you want to know God, Jesus is really important. I want to help you encounter Jesus. And we can do that through reading the Bible together, or you can come along to Alpha at that point, because Alpha is going to introduce you to Jesus and answer questions that you have about that. And then R is respond. We always want to I think this is, Hugh and I were talking earlier about, I think as Christians in the church, we're pretty good at the early stages of building relationships with people outside the church, and we're pretty good at the late stage of asking people to commit. But I do still think this is a challenge, to actually stand as that fork in the road, I like to say, and create a choice point. So as people have been becoming aware of their spiritual nature, interested in God, and being introduced to Jesus, okay, well, do you want to follow Jesus? Do you want to start that relationship with God through Jesus? So that's the whole process. I know we've really camped out in the early stages, because that's where we think the biggest barrier is, and where we personally feel like there's not a lot of tools and conversations happening yet in that space. So that's the whole process. I know we've only scratched the surface this morning. But if you want to know more, if you're on Instagram or Facebook, you can follow us at Start to Stir. We've got some QR codes in the front and back. And we just want to continue to share sample conversations, share quotes or books that we're reading that are helping us tackle the relevancy barrier and talk about faith. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook if you're on social media. We've written a few articles that really unpack all this at a deeper level, especially that introducing God and encountering Jesus that we didn't talk about today. So you can scan that QR code on the screen now or on the posters afterwards and read along with us. And then, yes, we just showed you a little video clip. We're about a week away from getting a 4-part video series that unpacks all the stages of stirring, including introducing to God, introducing to Jesus. So we'll send a link to Tim when those are live next week. And if any of you want to learn on your own, or maybe you've got a home group or a connect group that sometime in the next year or two wants to look at evangelism, maybe this 4-part video series, you'd want to take your group through that. And again, we talk about stirring, but we also talk about the next stages as well. So that will be available. So talk to Tim in the coming weeks. And then, if you ever wanted to try something different from Alpha that starts back here, we can also help you with that. So and this is really where we started with all this. When this came out of getting stuck with our young people and our lunch clubs and after-school groups. Caroline can big this up as well. But we call it a pre-Alpha course. But it's basically, you'd run it with people, non-Christians who are open to exploring faith, and it's a set of sessions that you can help stir spiritual curiosity, help people discover their soul. You can see them up there. Connect to God. Why would connecting with God, how could God help my life? And it's full of examples of real-life people. God helps me have a healthy self-image. God helps me make it through difficult times. God helps me forgive people who hurt me. God helps me to live full life. So lots of just practical, answering those practical questions. And then it's on to Jesus. And this is where we use lots of clips from The Chosen and clips from other portrayals of Jesus' life. that showed how Jesus lived a full life, and then also Jesus took our place. So Jesus is the one who takes us to God. So if you're ever interested in running a different kind of course than Alpha, because the people you know are starting further back, we can help you get started with that as well. I think that about wraps things up. Joy, is there anything else we want to make sure we say before? I know there was another exercise in there that we didn't do, but I think we were making the point. So if you're a person that's like, ooh, there was another exercise, you can do that on your own at home. It's really just to try to get us to keep practicing, looking for those longings, and pointing out, hey, I think that's spiritual, and how you can do that. I think that was the only thing we missed in that. Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. All right. That was a lot. We know a lot of that's probably a new and different way of thinking. I hope it helps you and encourages you. Practice, practice, practice. It's taken us a lot of years to practice. And yeah, we're back here tomorrow. Sorry you got to listen to us again, but there will be some familiar sounding things about these stirring points tomorrow, but we also want to really pick apart Paul in Acts 17. I think gives us such a really cool roadmap for how to share faith with people outside the church. Stirring curiosity is one main part of it. So we'll unpack that tomorrow and share a few more things with you. But thank you. You didn't come out for us this morning. You came out for yourself and for God. But on behalf of God and the church, thank you. I mean, I just think it's amazing that you want to learn how to share your faith better. And I think if nothing else, as a result of those texts some of us sent out, God's going to work, God's going to use it. That person that you're texting, I'm sure they know you care about them. So it doesn't really matter if you get things right or get it wrong. They know you care. And so you can try things, and if it doesn't work, you try something else. And they know that you're doing it for good motives. So we look forward to, God using those messages. So thank you so much.